In this video, we're going to learn conditions. So, what do we mean by conditions? Basically, we're going to be executing some code depending on some conditions that we're going to define ourselves. So, let's start with an example. So, we're going to build some code where we're going to send an alert message to the user depending on a value. So, let's say this value is the speed of a car. So you're gonna define a variable speed, okay? And let's set this variable, for example, to 50 miles per hour. And now we would like to send an alert message depending on the value of this speed. So the syntax is gonna be if, okay, followed by the condition, and the condition needs to be between parentheses. So the condition could be if speed is greater than 70 miles per hour. Okay, now we're going to send an alert message, and the code is going to be within curly brackets. I'm going to say window alert, you are going too fast. So again, what we have done here, so we set the condition, so if speed is greater than 70, and then the code to execute if that condition is true, okay, is this. So let's try and see. So F5 to refresh, nothing happens because our condition is not true. It's because the speed is too low. So let's change the speed to 80 and save. And now we can see the alert message, you are going too fast. All right. So now we can add another piece of code. So we can say, if the speed is greater than 70, send this alert message. And if otherwise, we want to see something else happening. Okay. So we can say else. And then we're gonna put the other piece of code to execute if the first condition is not verified. So we can say window alert or your speed is fine. Okay, now let's change the speed to 50, for example. Okay, so what the code is doing now, so first it's going to check this condition. So the condition is not verified because we are doing 50, so we're going to go to the else piece of code, and then we're going to run this code, and you get your speed is fine. Okay, so now let's say that if the speed is less than 70, but if it's too low, below 40, for example, we want to send another alert message. We want to say you are going too slow. So let's say we are on the motorway. If the speed is less than 40, it is actually slow. So how are we going to do that? Basically, you're going to have 3 or 2 conditions and then else. So the first condition is if the speed is more than 70, okay? And the second condition is going to be else if the speed is less than 40. So this is the syntax we need to use. So we're going to use else if, and then we put the other condition, okay? So else if the speed is less than 40, okay, then we're going to alert you are going too slow. And finally, we can have else and then execute the final piece of code. Your speed is fine. Okay, so let's try. It's 50, so speed is fine. Let's try 30. Okay, you are going too slow. So how the code works, it will check the first condition. Okay, it's not verified, and then it will go to else if speed is less than 40, then that's verified. So then we need to execute this piece of code. All right. Okay, now we're gonna move to, so let's change the code a little bit and have our page a little bit interactive. So we're gonna create an input. So let's say, let's create a paragraph and just say speed on the motorway. And then we're going to create an input. All right. And we give it an ID. Speed. And also a type. It's a number. Okay. All right. And we're gonna create a button. All right, and let's put some text there. Check. Okay. So now we can see that we've got an input, and what we'd like to do is we want the user to input their speed there, and once they click on check, then we can run this code. Okay, so all we need to do is to put this code inside a function and link the button to that function. So let's create a function that we're going to call check speed. Okay, and let's copy all. Okay, so now if we put all this code inside the function, okay, function is going to be like this, and we're going to put all the code that we had previously, and rather than defining the speed this time, so we want to retrieve the speed from the input of the user, which is this. So we need to set the speed to document get elements by ID, and in our case the input's ID is speed. All right, and we want to set that to we want to retrieve the value of that input. Okay, and we need to link the button to the function by saying on click we are running check speed. So let's try it. So let's try 80 miles per hour and check. You are going too fast. Let's try 50 miles per hour, and it says your speed is fine. And if we try 30 miles per hour, it says you are going too slow. So the code is working. All right. So this is for conditions using if. Now we're going to move to something else. We're going to move to conditions using switch. So it's a little bit different. So basically the switch function will actually check a few conditions, okay, and then it will execute some code just as we have done with if, but it's a little bit different. So let's have a look. So we're going to create another input where the user is going to input a season, and the code is going to return an alert message depending on the inputs of the user. Okay, so we're just going to copy paste the paragraph we created earlier, and then we're going to change it a little bit. So you're going to have here your season now, and then we're going to give it an ID, season. Okay, or just my input. Okay, and we don't need the type for now. And then the button, you can name it submit, and we're gonna run a function that we're gonna define later on. So, and let's call this function check season, for example. Yeah. Okay. So now let's create this function. So function check season. All right. So first of all, so we need to retrieve the value that the user has input. So we're going to define a variable x, and we're going to set the value of x to the input of the user using the get elements by ID. So we're looking at the inputs with ID my input, and we're going to get the value of this input. Okay. And then we're going to use the switch function. So this is the syntax. So we need to use the switch function. It needs a parameter. Okay, so our parameter is going to be x, because we're going to be assessing the value of x and looking at different cases. Okay, so first case, and we need to use the case keyword, is going to be summer. All right, and if this case is verified, then the alerts message is going to be window.alert. It is summertime. Okay, and then we're going to have another case, but before we do that, we need to break. So if the case is verified, so if we have this case, then we're gonna run that code, and then we're gonna break, and the code is gonna stop here. We're not looking at the rest of the function. Okay, but if the case is not true, then we need to have a look at the next case, which is winter. Okay, and we just need to do another alert. It is winter time. Okay, and then we break after that. So after each case, we have piece of code and then a break. So just make sure that there is no nothing between the case and winter. There is only space. Okay, and this is how the syntax of break works. So now let's add two other cases, one for spring and one for autumn. So spring, it is springtime, and then the last one. Okay, so now what happens if the user inputs something else? So we don't have any of these cases. So now we're gonna need to use defaults. Okay, so this is the code that's going to be executed if none of these conditions is verified. So we're just going to run this piece of code. I do not recognize this. I do not recognize this. Okay, so let's try it and see how it works. So spring, for example. Okay, it's not working. Let's have a look at our console and see what's we've got something, unexpected token 28. Okay, so following the case, it's not a semicolon, but it's a colon, so we need to, we made a mistake there. Okay, so let's check now. spring. Okay, the code is working. Okay, if you put winter, it is working as well. Okay, now let's try winter with a capital letter for W. It doesn't recognize this. So how do we make sure that even if the user inputs capital letters, we still run the code, we still recognize their inputs? We can actually get the elements by ID value and then change that to lowercase. Okay, so we can do to lowercase. Okay, so this method is going to turn whatever input the user puts there to all lowercase. All right, so let's try. Let's save and try again. So if we put winter with small letters, it is working, and we've put winter with capital letters, now it is working as well. Okay, so that's how switch conditions work. So again, so we need to give a parameter to the a switch function, and then we have cases. Okay, so the syntax is case space and then the value we want to check for the parameter, followed by a colon, and then we put the piece of code we would like to run if this condition is true. Okay, and then we break if the condition is true, and then if this doesn't work, the code is gonna look at other cases. Okay, and if none of the cases is verified, then the code is gonna run the default code, which follows the default keyword. All right.